right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Designing the Best You. We're diving right in. This is the second wound, okay? One of the main four. And if you didn't hear the first two from last week and the week before, please go check those out first because it's going to set a baseline for today's episode. Yes, you can listen to today's episode, but you're going to be like, wait, why? Right? This is how your wounds are sabotaging your career, okay? So the second wound is guilt. Now, the guilt wound is created from having a caretaker, typically your parents, but sometimes we have other caretakers. They blame you, they shame you, they guilt you for basically everything, all right? Raise your hand if that's been, you have been the victim of that, okay? Now, as parents, let's be real, sometimes we do that, okay? But when it's a constant thing, okay, it's not something, first of all, anyone needs, let alone a child, as they're like, what are these big feelings? And now I'm getting in trouble for having these feelings and things I can't control. And oh my goodness, I really just did accidentally drop that milk and spill it, or my hands, I'm getting used to like my hands still and they're all over the place and they knocked it off. And now I'm getting in big trouble for that because I'm already upset and you're upset and yeah, all the things. But what happens is, and this is not an excuse for the caretaker, okay? We own our own stuff here. The caretaker is typically detached, okay? They're cold, they're emotionally not present, and they're very unstable, right? You never know what's gonna happen, okay? And as a child, first of all, let alone that being scary, it's not safe, it makes you feel guilty for everything. Again, raise your hand. Have you felt guilty for basically anything you do? It rolls into not just your career, but like your marriage, your own parenting, your relationships with friends, just how you manage money and stuff. You're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have bought that for myself. Oh, I really could have like invested that instead. And now I feel bad. Come on, okay, I'm sorry. I'm not blaming you. I'm not shaming you for that. It can develop at various degrees, okay, of intensity and severity. But I want to share with you what we call some common symptoms. Okay, symptoms we know are just our body and our mind saying, hello, help. There's something else deeper, okay? So some common symptoms are you're perpetually feeling sorry about things. You're apologizing when things even aren't your fault. Women do this a lot, okay, just in general. You have an inability to ask for what you need. What you need. Not what you want, what you need, okay? You use guilt to manipulate. I just had a client tell me that her husband would make her feel bad if they didn't have sex every like 6 to 7 days. And he would actually count and keep track and then say, we haven't had it in X amount of days. And then she'd feel guilty and just do it anyways. No, stop, okay? Another symptom is you have a fear of setting boundaries. Oh my gosh, if I say no, then this is going to happen, or they're going to X me out of their life, or what is it the kids say these days? I cancel you out, right? You have a deep inner pain of feeling unworthy. If you guys haven't checked out Jamie Kern Lima's book, Worthy, oh my gosh, please do. I'll link it in the show notes. It is amazing. And it's amazing how so many of us have this feeling of unworthiness, okay? Another one is you people please, okay? Like all the time. You don't serve yourself, you're pleasing everyone else but yourself, okay? You live in a constant state of fear, anxiety, guilt. You neglect yourself and you have a really, really hard time relaxing. You have overworking tendencies, right? You're just like, I'm just going to put myself into my work. And you have really strong feelings of guilt when you have to take a break. No, I have to get this done. No, I've got it right? Okay. And now again, and this is not an exhaustive list as always, but what the thing is here is we're all going to experience that list at some point, multiple times throughout our life. But if that is like your common thing, you're like, that is so me. All the time, 100%. You share that with your spouse and they're like, yep, that's you. I've been trying to tell you, right? Type thing. Okay. It's okay. But why do I bring these things up when we're talking about health and career? You're like, Vanessa, I mean, kind of makes sense, but not really. Can you share with me? Yes, I'm going to share with you why this makes sense in your health and your career. Okay. We're going to talk more about the career aspect and relationships than we are health right now on this episode. But if you listen to my other episodes, you're going to hear like how it all starts to connect. Okay. So here we go. The one thing I want to say too is, and it's so true, is our body systems are not separate, right? We like to go to a therapist to talk. We like to go, and I'm not saying none of these are wrong. I'm just saying this is how society works. Therapists to talk. We want to go to a gastroenterologist because our tummy hurts. We want to go to a cardiologist because we're having heart palpitations. We want to go to an endocrinologist because we're having cortisol and thyroid issues. We want to go to like all these different things. And again, we want to go to a chiropractor because our neck's hurting. I'm not saying any of those are wrong, but if we think constantly in just systems separating them, that's not how God designed our body. They all are freaking intertwined, okay? Like our nervous system. That one is something you can't see. Tell me out there if there's a doctor for a nervous system. And the crowd goes silent, right? Because there isn't one. But here's the thing, like our nervous system is so important and it's impacted from when we're in our mother's womb. That's crazy, right? And no one can fix it but you, okay? You can't go to a doctor and say, give me a pill for my nervous system and regulate it, okay? You can't go and say, I'm going to eat this way and it's going to regulate my nervous system. You can't, take a vacation, it's going to regulate, and it's going to make you relax and regulate your nervous system, okay? But what happens is that when it's in our mother's womb, we take on our mom's nervous system, okay? If she's like anxious and all the time and whatnot, or she's constantly doubting, or she has that guilt wound, guess what? It's going to be passed on to us most likely. And then we're going to experience it out of the womb with her as well, unless she's healing. Okay. And then we might experience it also from our father too. And that's a lot of times that's what happens. And so that what happens is it sets the stage. Our nervous system inside our mother's wombs, when we're impacted by that, sets the stage for a whole other parts of our lives, our careers, our relationships, money. Well, I mean, all of it, okay? And so when we understand what we feel, okay, and how we act, and I know so many of you guys are professionals out there working and you're like, feel? No, I just got to get it done, right? But that's the problem, is we just kind of got to get it done because that's what society says, when actually what we truly need as human beings, we feel as beings, is we have to do that, okay? And so when we understand those things, how we act as a result and how we feel, then we're able to take action to heal our nervous systems, to nourish our bodies and minds and souls so we can do all that we were designed to do. Oh, designing the best you. That's what we do here, okay? But here's the thing with guilt, okay? And again, we all feel the guilt, all right? All the wounds are hard, all right? We talked about the abandonment wound last week. I still believe that's one of the hardest to overcome. Maybe that's because it's my strongest one. But yeah, guilt is the second in my opinion, okay? Again, we all experience it from time to time. However, someone who struggles with codependency, when they struggle with codependency, there's a level of deep internalized shame. And so those who have had guilt wounds as a child, you typically are codependent, okay? And there's many codependents were or are still victims of abuse or neglect, okay? And it becomes almost normal. I hate that word, but I kind of got to describe it, average for everyone, to take on the role of that victim feeling as though they are to blame for everything, right? If you were blamed for everything as a child, you're going to accept that, well, it's just my fault. Yep, it was me again. Okay. And even like your spouse is going to say things like, why, like, stop playing the victim role, right? And it makes it really hard to, what do I want to say, access a feeling of self-worth and sovereignty, okay? Right? We have God as our almighty sovereign God, okay? But we have some sovereignty in us too, okay? Rather than standing up for yourself through that guilt wound, what you typically hear a codependent doing is they over-explain and they over-apologize as a way to not rock the boat, right? Keep the peace. Just no conflict. I don't want to do the conflict thing, right? And so if you have those codependent traits, you probably are taking responsibility for someone else's things that you didn't do. For a long time, I took responsibility for what my parents didn't do. I'm like, oh, my dad just works really hard. You know what, my mom, she had a really rough childhood. And while those things are true, I used those, okay, to push down my feelings and take on their stuff. We take on our own stuff, and anything we can't handle, we hand over to God. We don't put it on anyone else. That would be like me telling my child, you know what? This month I can't pay the bills, and can we use your allowance? And then they feel guilty, and then what happens, right? Then that's how they talk then for the rest of their life. Well, you know what, someone needs this, so I have to give it to them, right? We said one of the symptoms, not being able to set boundaries. And then as a result, what happens is you're unable to, if you're unable to fix or manage or control the situation, which most of the time you're not, you feel guilty. And then what happens is then you start to have all these gut issues. Then you start to have brain fog. Then you start like all these different health issues that do happen. Okay. I will share with you, I'll be vulnerable here. And it was the beginning of middle of last week. So we've had forest fires here and in the mountains, and we had a really big one. And I think it's actually still, it might be at 10% containment. It was at almost 1,000 acres. And they're trying to get it down. But anyways, my husband had sealed a deal for one of the events that was kind of just in the mountains, right where the fire was. It was spreading towards the east. His event was kind of towards the west. And when he told me he lost the job because the officials were like, hey, no one's running a race. You're not going to be able to serve these people because we're not having a race because of the health issues that can come up and the roads being blocked and all those things. I started to feel guilty. I was like, oh my gosh, like, why did I push him to help get that deal closed? I just started to take it all on me. And I was like, I had to stop and go, okay, yes, he's probably going to feel bad about it. Yes, it was a big deal that was closed, but didn't happen, because he didn't get to fulfill it completely. And so I'm sure so many of you have that too. And, I know he felt bad because he has a guilt wound too, that, he's like, I'm letting my boss down. I'm letting my company down. And you guys do that too. You're like, a deal fell through, or, materials didn't get there on time. And now you're like stuck, and you planned all this stuff out. And like, guilt is debilitating, guys. And it's going to leave us stuck and powerless. I'm not saying we need to be this almighty powerful person, but we need to be able to feel that we're worthy and confident and we deserve this stuff. And what happens is it keeps us riding around on this little like triangle, right? So you keep bouncing, right? From victim to rescuer to martyr. And if anyone's been in any kind of like abuse counseling, that's what they say. Like you're a victim, and then you're the martyr, and then you're the rescuer, and then you just keep going back and forth, right? And personally, I've struggled with codependency, and a lot of my clients have, especially as they get up into higher positions. They want the power, but then they feel guilty, and then, so those type of things happen, and I'm sure you guys have felt that. But I know how much value and safety we receive by stepping in and helping people. Even as a holistic health practitioner, I'm like, I want to save you. I want to just take you into my home, and then you're going to follow my protocol exactly. And I'm going to make sure you exercise, and I'm going to make sure you eat right, and I'm going to make sure that you do your stress exercise, and I'm going to make sure you do your nervous system regulation, and all will be well. I have that. And then I feel guilty that when they don't do what they're supposed to do, or their body responds in a way that we didn't know, that I feel bad. And I'm like, oh, I'm such a bad practitioner. So those type of things happen. I'm real, y'all. We know this, okay? But we owe it to ourselves to heal that guilt wound. And I'm not saying it's ever going to be completely gone, guys. It's every stage of our life, we start to learn some things and apply them, okay? But we get to reclaim our power by beginning to take care of ourselves first, right? Put your own oxygen mask on first. I love my kids, but I can't do everything for them. I can't be everything for them. I have to be, I'm going to cry. I have to take care of me first. If I don't regulate my system, what's going to happen? I'm going to scream and yell at them. I'm going to say something that I don't mean to say. It's going to make them feel guilty, and then they're going to have the guilt wounds. So A constant sense of guilt is one of the most challenging emotions I come across in people, okay? And sometimes it's a subtle feeling, right? Sometimes like, I'm not guilty, people, and you're like, I kind of see it. It can be a nagging sense of like all the things you've done wrong. A lot of you, when you guys get laid off or you get let go or you get fired, that just starts spiraling, right? That's because you don't have a job to focus on. So then you're focusing on all the things you did wrong. Focus on the things you did right. I'll say that again. When you get laid off, when you lose a job, when you don't get the promotion, when you don't get, you're unable to negotiate what you want, okay, whatever it is, when you come home and you yell at your spouse or your kids or whatever it is, when you don't follow the health regimen, okay, think about the things that you did that were right and were good, not what you did wrong. Okay, I'm going into the steps of things to do first, but sometimes it's not so subtle, okay? Sometimes it's a sense of guilt that just like weighs you down like a ball and chain, right? Maybe you had a family member that passed unexpectedly or in a horrid way. I had a friend who had their mom passed in such a horrid way, unexpectedly, while he was on vacation with his son. And I'm like, oh my God. And then, it's like all the guilt just whoosh all at once. I should have been there. I should, like all these things, right? Things happen. I'm not saying you're not going to feel a little bit guilty and stuff like that. I felt guilty when I did no contact with my family. I felt guilty when my grandparents passed and I couldn't be there and I couldn't speak one more word about Jesus to one of them. Like there's going to be some of that, but toxic, we'll call it like toxic shame, because shame and guilt go hand in hand. Okay. That's why I said at the beginning, it's the shame and the guilt. They blame you, they shame you, they guilt you. Okay. So toxic shame is something that's in our profession that we talk about that refers to a chronic feeling or an emotional state, I want to say, of feeling bad, of feeling worthless, of feeling inferior, fundamentally flawed, right? Oh my gosh, why do I have chicken legs? And then you never wear anything that shows your legs, right? You feel guilty because someone that you cared for said something on a regular basis and hurt you, okay? It's toxic, and I call it toxic because it's unjust. My kids and I are studying the attributes of God, and we're talking about one of them yesterday was God is just, right? Right. So it's toxic shame, toxic guilt it's unjust. Whereas you have healthy shame is when we do something morally wrong, such as like aggressing against others. Okay. So what does the lingering voice of guilt sound like? Maybe you guys have said this to yourselves. Maybe someone has said it to you. Okay, so listen up. Maybe you're not giving your kids enough attention. Right, you're working too hard. You're not giving them enough attention. Maybe I'm unlovable. You know what? I don't matter. Everything is my fault. You know what? I can't do anything right. How many of you have been in a meeting with someone says that? Oh my goodness. I was a bad child. I deserved to be hit or kicked. I deserved to be treated the way others treat me. My needs and wants, they're not important. No one likes me, right? Maybe on the playground, no one picked you, right, to be on their team for Red Rover, something like that. Maybe you were always last or you got to sit alone at the table, and so you started to have those thoughts consume you too. Maybe they were reinforced at home, okay? I'm never good enough. I'll never get out of debt. Oh my goodness. You're late, and now your colleague has to pick up your slack. You neglect your friends. You work so much. You should spend more time with them. Oh my goodness, I should not have eaten those cookies as I'm sitting here with a bag of stuff snacking, right? You know what? I should call my brother, my sister more. What about what about your mom, your dad, your sister, grandma, grandpa? They need you, right? I mean, the list could go on, guys, okay? But I invite you to pay attention, right? The set of episodes is not like the ones that I typically talk about. And I do it because I strongly believe the nervous system and these wounds are at the root cause, and they start so far back in our lives, and it impacts every aspect of our life now. And we can't move forward in our career, and we can't move forward in our health if we have these feelings and we're not doing anything about them. You can throw every freaking supplement and medication and doctor visit and coffee and whatever at it, exercise routine, hobby, whatever, and it's not going to solve it. You have to know these wounds. You have to understand why you feel the way that you feel, and you have to address them, or you're not going to go where God has planned you to go. And you're going to leave things unfinished here for other people to handle, right? As a parent, if I don't handle my stuff now from my childhood, my kids get to handle it. If I don't handle something at work because I'm emotionally distraught, or I've got mental issues from my childhood that I'm not willing to take on, guess what? Someone else has to take that on, those responsibilities. Like, not to mean to say it, but like, shame on me for not taking it on, right? But I'm giving you guys the tools here. I'm explaining to you why, so you understand. And as we get through the episode here, we'll share more about like the tools, the things that you can do. Okay, so everyone wants to take a pill for every ill. Everyone, simple stuff. This is hard work. It's long work. It is years of work. Okay. Anyways, off that soapbox. But it's common to feel, what do I want to say, like shame-ridden. And no, let me back up here. It's common for a shame-ridden person to also suffer from anxiety, chronic anxiety, and low self-esteem. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I have anxiety, give me some medication. You have shame in your life. You have shame as from a child. You have the guilt. Someone was shaming you and blaming you, and so you're always like on edge about something. Think about that. It's almost common sense, but we don't even slow down enough to be with ourselves, to think, to process, to let anyone else in help us, okay? And some people cope by hurting or not taking care of themselves. Other people become highly antisocial, narcissistic. If you have narcissistic parents, oh my goodness, right? They're avoiding every kind of help, right? Because they know what's best, okay? And when we have that toxic shame, when we have that toxic guilt, you feel unjust. You feel that responsibility, right? So you not only feel ashamed, but guilty for things that you're not actually responsible for. And then you feel responsible for other people's emotions. I don't know about you guys, but as a kid, I had to feel my sister's emotions. I had to feel that. And I was actually just complaining to my husband. I was like, oh my gosh, right during that time of month, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to hold this child's emotions and this one, and then the personalities, and then yours, and then mine, and I can't do it anymore, right? I was dysregulated, and I was dealing with a shame or a guilt wound. Like, oh my gosh, I have to handle it all. First of all, I wasn't looking to our Lord and Savior. Second of all, I was trying to take all that on, and that's not safe. That's not right. So it's unjust, okay? And especially we have a hard time with unhappy emotions or anger emotions, right? Those big, big ones. But overcoming guilt, I know it feels impossible, but I want to encourage you through this episode, because there's a little secret about guilt that I want to fill you in on, okay? Guilt can be and is a very healthy feeling when it's used in its original manner, okay? Guilt's purpose in our life is to reroute our behavior. Think about that. Reroute our behavior. When we've done something wrong, guilt's there, right? It's like, hello, right? I was just looking at my 6-year-old this morning, and I was like, so there's all the diced avocado in the freezer and the blueberries. The bags were empty, and there's fingerprints on the freezer door, and you have some on your fingers. Did you eat them? No, mommy. No. Huh, okay. So then I waited. Sorry, this was yesterday. And then this morning, we were talking about some stuff in our devotional time, and I was like, you know what, man, I'm never mad at you guys for doing something wrong. I just want you to own it so that you know what you can do next time differently. And I said, so I'm just going to ask one more time, like, who out of the three of you, because they're little fingerprints, like, was eating the diced avocado and the blueberries in there without asking? And now there's empty bags. And I don't mind that you eat them, just let me know so that I can replenish them, or maybe I need them for recipe. And he looks at me and he goes, It was me, mommy. So that's the good guilt. And I didn't sit there like, you did it, right, type thing. Like a lot of us have experienced, and sometimes we do as parents, but I let him feel that guilt and shame in a good manner. I didn't punish him for it. I was just like, hey, can you go write down the grocery list so we can go get some more? And he was like, oh, okay. That's what we do in our family. And that's what I encourage you to do too, is like, it's inviting us, that good, healthy shame is inviting us to apologize, inviting us to make amends, clean up our side of the streets, okay? You know, if there's a night I haven't gotten much sleep, my mood can go quickly south. I don't know about y'all, especially women, like boom, right? When my husband gets home from work and I snap because, you know, he forgot to pick up whatever I had asked for, and because my window of tolerance was so low due to my lack of sleep, the guilt's right there around the corner reminding me, make it right, go apologize, go get some sleep, go to bed early, right? But due to our childhood conditioning and our culture, so it's a combination, right? Many times we douse ourselves with our own guilt when we've actually done nothing wrong, or we over guilt ourselves too. You know, just because you're experiencing guilty feelings doesn't mean you've done anything wrong, okay? Now, I want to go over, because this is a career and health podcast, and we want to advance your career by uncovering these hidden health issues, okay? I want to go over how these behaviors from the guilt wound show up in the workplace. So you'll notice them, okay? And they cross over into other parts of life, okay? So I am combining words today. Lack of healthy self-love. Okay, so because a person when they usually suffer from that low self-esteem from the guilt wound, these manifest into poor self-care. You kind of do your hair. I notice it with my husband. Okay, it's good. You have a lack of empathy. You have inadequate social skills. There's more, but these are basic ones for that lack of healthy self-love. Okay, maybe you have an emptiness. The person typically feels that chronic emptiness and loneliness, lack of motivation. Now, we're all going to have this from time to time. Maybe they just don't want to do anything. They have no active goals. I'm just getting through life and surviving. I'm not thriving. Hey, if you haven't checked out that guide, my survival guide in there, from getting out of survival mode so you can thrive, it's in the show notes. Download it. Quick little plug there. So maybe you do things to distract yourself from how you feel. Okay. Perfectionism. This one is huge in the workplace. Huge. You can't finish something or turn it in, complete a project until it is perfect. You never use the word perfect, by the way, because you're like, that's a bad word, right? Or you don't start something. You get everything set up and you're like, but if I start it, maybe some business owners are like, I have this idea, but I need all these things. I don't have them yet. And guess what? You have a phone. That's all you really need, by the way. And a way to collect payment. It's simple. Venmo, Zelle, everyone has it these days, okay? And people who struggle with that toxic shame because of have that high perfectionism, because as children, they were held to unrealistic standards. I was always like, I told my therapist a couple of years ago, I'm like, I don't understand. My parents don't want me. And I never was able to do anything right. And she's like, no, that's not true. You did a lot of things right. Their standards, their expectations were constantly moving based on their feelings and moods for the day. Feelings are good, moods are fine. They're not good or bad, but we don't make decisions off of them, and we don't make people live up to our feelings or our moods. So we would be punished if we didn't meet those unrealistic expectations or constantly moving expectations, okay? Narcissism, right? Then you've got people who have these grandiose fantasies, right, about how they're going to become rich and famous and powerful and conquer the world, believing it will make all those painful feelings just go away because if you have more money and you look successful, no one's going to care, right? You have unhealthy relationships. I don't even need to go into that. We all know what unhealthy relationships are. And toxic shame is just one of the most debilitating feelings, okay? It's just so debilitating. But here's the thing. Is the root of toxic shame, you guys are going to hate me for saying this again, but it has its roots in trauma, okay? Trauma is a word people either don't think about much or they associate with something extreme, like someone just beating someone, sexual abuse. And while those things indeed are traumatic, and if you've experienced them or are experiencing them, if you are, please get help as soon as possible. But there's a lot of experiences that people don't recognize as trauma. And that's why they have a hard time understanding things like childhood neglect can be a form of abuse or trauma. It really is. Your parents left you alone at an age that was too young. That's neglect. They didn't care for your basic needs and weren't there emotionally. That's neglect, okay? And in most cases, it's trauma a person experienced in their childhood and adolescence. And even more so, the trauma was experienced in a repeated fashion, and it was never processed or healed. And so the person, which is many of us, were conditioned into routinely feeling ashamed when there was nothing to be ashamed or guilty or whatever of, okay? So, anyways, now we're going to dive into some, let me skip down here in my notes so I make sure I know where I'm at here. Some emotional states, well, not necessarily emotional states, but just some situations that might happen in work. You know, I expressed some like broad ones, and now we're going to really dive into the career aspect of it. You have unfair negotiations, right? A manipulator at work, someone who shames and blames. It's not your caretaker in childhood, but it's someone doing it at work. Maybe negotiates in a way that doesn't feel fair with no-win solutions. Maybe they give you an unfair workload and they leave someone with one person A over here has got 20 tasks after a meeting, and then everyone else has got 2. Okay. Maybe you have insincere praise. They might give praise that just subtly undermines someone's confidence. How many of y'all been there? Okay. And now remember, like, most people don't do this on purpose. It's a response to their unhealed trauma, but then you get triggered by their unhealed trauma. Get it? Or guilt tripping, right? They make them feel guilty or ashamed to gain their control or influence. They might remind someone of, oh, you've helped me out all these times. Make you responsible for their emotions or actions, just like your caretakers did, right? They gaslight you, right? They make you question reality, memory, perceptions. Oh, you didn't remember it that way. No, this is exactly how it went, right? They might lie, deny things, twist things. Oh, you always say it this way, but this is really what happened. And they usually do it in front of someone else who they want respect or honor from, okay? So, but any of you guys felt those? And again, we're going to feel those from time to time. But if you're feeling those on a regular basis, you're experiencing that guilt wound. You have an unhealed wound from childhood. You're experiencing it in the workplace. You're probably experiencing it at home in your relationships, your money, like all those things, okay? So how do we start healing this? You're like, please, I want to heal it. I'm tired of hearing about it. Okay, we need to understand, number one, okay, that feelings and emotions are all feedback. Yes, they manifest in our body over time, okay, and cause chronic illnesses and stuff like that. But let's use fear as an example. Fear is designed to keep us safe. We wouldn't want to swim in a swamp in Florida, right? We would be terrified about those alligators, right? So fear has a specific purpose, okay? So that's the same thing with guilt, okay? Hey, yeah, that's not okay, but you got to go clean up your mess, okay? Allow yourself to feel the emotion, whether it's guilt or something else, okay, that you're going to discover. Take a deep breath. Stop over-explaining, stop apologizing, and notice in your body, like, where you're feeling the guilt, okay? Is there a particular sensation? Some people feel guilt, they'll get it, like, in their throat because they're like, I'm trying to, like, Some people feel tense in their shoulders. Some people feel it in their hips. You have to feel those things, okay? And recognize them so you can heal them. So you can say, hey, right, there's somatic exercises for all that type of stuff we can go into later. The second thing is affirm yourself, okay? You've determined that you are experiencing unhelpful guilt. So remind yourself, hey, you're allowed to have needs, desires, preferences, okay? And that's what makes you special and you uniquely you, okay? Remind yourself that you are not too much. Every time I say that or hear it, I'm like, oh my gosh, because my mom would tell me I'm too much. You're not too much, okay? You are able to handle your big feelings and emotions, and you You are allowed to be around people who make you feel safe. You are safe to feel and ask for what you need. You have to be. That's part of humans, okay? But I love this particular step because this is where you get to separate out who you are from your relationships, okay? You get to decide if your behavior was poor according to you, and I always say according to what aligns with the Bible, okay? Well, it was according to you, not them, right? I had to do a lot of work with that with my parents, not with them, but like about the situations with them, because I was like, oh my gosh, but they think of me this way. No, what do you think about yourself? What does God think about it? And if it was unjust, great, okay, we'll handle that, we'll process it. If it was truly your fault, you work through it, okay? You don't have to see yourself through your mom's filter, your dad's, your churches, your friends, your workplaces. You're responsible for what you think, not what everyone else thinks, okay? So that's huge. The third one, okay? The third tool for healing, okay? Identify your biggest triggers for guilt, okay? And I like to write these down, and you can come back to them, okay? So when you're like, oh my gosh, and then you're like, oh wait, I'm actually there right now. I'm actually in that relationship right now. Oh, that person did come over, so yeah, I am getting triggered by them, and this is how I'm going to handle them in the future, okay? Right? Is it around certain people? Is it around holidays, right? Is it around birthdays? Is it people from church? Is it my best friend since I was 12? Is it your boss at work? Is it around circumstances? Is it, every time maybe you get a bill, you're like, you start to feel guilty and you start to feel that shame? Is it every time a promotion comes up or a raise, or every time you get let go from a job or need to change jobs, okay? Is it all things career related? Maybe you're asking for help to move on a Saturday and you have to say no to teaching Little League or something, and you're feeling that guilty and you're like, oh man, no, you know what? I need help moving. I don't have to teach Little League, right? Type thing. So what are those triggers for you? Because identifying those triggers can help you prepare a bit better so you're not taken off guard. And you're going to fail the first handful of times. I don't know how many times I'm like, okay, I sit there and pray in the morning, and then I sit there and I'm like, okay, I know I've been triggered by this. I'm going to go out and I'm going to use my tools, and then I don't use the tools. So it's okay. And I've been at this for a while now. Like, it happens. And so I want you to be really intentional, okay? Because when you're intentional, that's when change happens. You can't change anyone else. You can't change their perceptions of you. You can't change how they did make you feel in the past, but you can change how you feel now moving forward and what you're going to do about it, okay? So basically, how to heal a childhood wound of guilt. Avoid thinking that you have to rescue everyone, okay? Release the guilt that your inner child is holding on to. Work on setting healthy boundaries by understanding your triggers. And then I'm telling you, once you start to do that, then we're able to work on the actual physical health stuff. We're actually able to create strategies to help you advance in your career, so that the next time something happens in your job, the next time something happens in your family, you are better at handling it. Not completely healed from it, but you're better at handling it, okay? So your actions do not have to be defined by your guilt wound, all right? But I want you to know, as we're ending this episode here, regardless of how your inner child may be hurting, there's always a wiser version of yourself that can provide healing and reparenting to your younger self, okay? You deserve it, and that's what we're working through, okay? Oh my gosh, so many good things in this episode. I hope you got something out of it that resonates with you, okay? The world needs your gifts. The world needs your talents and ideas. The world needs you the way God created you, okay? Not what people perceive you as, okay? So you're worthy of so much in this life. Give yourself grace. This is not going to be easy as you go on this new journey here, but I want you to know I'm here to help. So if any of that resonated with you and you're like, I need help and I don't know where to start, head to the show notes. Check out the links. There's one in there to book a call. There's one for the survival mode guide. Get in the system, okay? Get on the phone on a Zoom call with me and we can chat. There's no obligation. There's no sales pitch. If you're interested, that's fine. I want you guys to feel safe and comfortable, okay? So until next time, keep on designing the next or the best you.